Fox 26 reporter Ivory is live in Montgomery County to take a look at that aspect.
Thanks, guys. That's right. Before we get to that story, I want to let you, the viewers, know that Fox Corp has been muzzling me to keep certain information from you, the viewers. And from what I'm gathering, I am not the only reporter being subjected to this. I am going to be releasing some recordings about what goes on behind the scenes at Fox because it applies to you, the viewers. I found a nonprofit journalism group called Project Veritas. It's going to help put that out tomorrow, so tune into them. But as for this heat wave across Texas, you can see what it's doing to AC units.
And welcome back to the War on Consciousness. We are so excited to be joined by former Fox correspondent and current independent journalist, Ivory. Ivory, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me on.
So we're really excited to get into some of your experiences working in the mainstream media. I guess I want to preface my first question by asking you all the different outlets you've worked at. I know you worked at Fox, I think MSNBC and one other.
I worked for 2 NBC affiliates, and then a Fox affiliate was my first station. But the Fox Houston was my first Fox-owned station where, you know, some of the most powerful people in media were my bosses, the Murdochs.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay. Well, that's going to help us out with this first question here. I'd like for you to briefly describe your experience at Fox in Houston. I'm sure many of our viewers, you know, are familiar with your story and your moment on air, but can you tell us a little bit about what led up to that moment that pushed you to the point of deciding, you know, I'm sort of just gonna blow up my corporate career right now to expose what's happening behind the scenes at Fox and why they're muzzling me from bringing the real news to the public?
Yeah, well, I mean, it began with the unprecedented social media censorship we saw beginning in 2020. And when I attempted to just alert the public to the dangers of censorship, and I was harshly reprimanded by my Fox bosses for doing that, that was the first giant red flag when, you know, censorship is the enemy of free press journalism. So if there's anything a journalist is supposed to be biased towards, it's free speech. You're supposed to be biased against censorship because, you know, history, you learn in J school that censorship leads to the oppression of people, leads to stripping their liberties away. Censorship is the tool the governments use to control people. And so when I saw my supposed free press bosses suddenly saying that's something that you can't criticize, that was a huge red flag to me. And then I realized that they were conducting basically the exact same censorship that the social media outlets were doing. So corporate news outlets were doing the same censorship. Then I proceeded to be extremely disciplined by my bosses for coverage of COVID treatment.
To cease and desist posting about hydroxychloroquine. In my opinion, you failed as a reporter to not know more if you were going to post about hydroxychloroquine, that you didn't look it up and look at the latest posts, the latest research about it. Read the articles, read the study. There was a major study in the New England Journal of Medicine on July 23rd before that doctor, you know, went viral. I mean, you didn't refer to any of that.
That study makes him more newsworthy. I was aware of that study, which is why I posted him.
What study?
Because
Which study?
I referenced it in my story about Dr. Emanuel.
They disciplined me for allowing a doctor to say what he treats his patients with, even though they had sent me to talk to that doctor. So there was this understanding of the unspoken narrative that I wasn't supposed to let him say certain things, or if he said something that was outside of the narrative, I was supposed to carve that off and keep it out of the public's ears. So that, so they threatened to fire me for not doing that, for not following the narrative there. And that is when it was over for me, which was in my head. I was like, I cannot be a part of this anymore. And that was summer of 2020, but I was trapped in a contract. So I literally pondered every day for 10 months how to get out of that contract. It was a strict contract. And then finally, crossed paths with Project Veritas and realized that was the way to get out.
In our world of big names, curiously, our true heroes tend to be anonymous. The teacher, the nurse, the mother, the honest cop, the hard worker at lonely, underpaid, unglamorous, unpublicized jobs. These can remain heroes precisely because they remain unsung.
I know that by doing this job, I risk my professional reputation, and I know that it could very potentially limit my abilities to do things in the future, such as holding a government security clearance.
When you started having, I don't know, these revelations that this wasn't aligned with you, were there other people that felt the same? Were you talking to other people that felt the same, that were just afraid of leaving, or did you just kind of keep it to yourself?
I did end up talking to some other journalists who felt the same. It was interesting because early in the pandemic, Fox had everybody start working from home. We were all banned from going to the TV station. So the community we used to have as journalists was gone. And in fact, early in the pandemic, our Phoenix Fox colleagues got in trouble because they all had a party and they all got COVID. So after that, across the nation, all Fox employees were banned from hanging out together. And so I wasn't even able to see any of my coworkers to talk about what on earth was going on with this propaganda. But a couple of coworkers, one of them ended up just calling me one day in frustration, just out of the blue, and being like, "Are you feeling the way I'm feeling?" And I was like, "Yeah," you know. And we talked about all of the craziness of the pandemic and just all of the rules that Fox had placed on us, just over the top. And you know, so I realized that person was feeling the same way, but that person really wanted to advance in their career, so they were willing to put up with all of that. That person talked about the narrative and how deceptive it was, but that person wants to stick it out. And I respect that. I respect the people who are sticking it out inside the corporations, because I think you can make a difference. It just dawned on me that I feel like I can make more of a difference if I get out of the corporation. So that's how it was for me. For the people staying in there, I respect it. I just hope that they stick to the truth and don't get pushed around.
I think that really is a testament to how far we have fallen from just understanding our sovereign freedom. That, you know, we think a company we work for has the right to control our private lives and what we don't do or don't do, you know, outside of work. It's really crazy to me. So, you know, journalism, like you were just touching on, was originally for the purpose of empowering the people with knowledge to keep the powers accountable, not to keep the people accountable to the powers. So it's very much, you know, kind of been this reversal we've seen, especially in the pandemic era. But, you know, you went to journalism school, Ivory. What, in your mind, what is the ultimate essence or purpose of true journalism?
Well, we were taught in journalism school that the primary purpose of journalism is to provide people with the information they need to be free and self-governing. So it's all about empowering the individual to live their life exactly as they see fit. And I think that has been lost. I think that's been lost. You know, your first loyalty, according to journalism school, is to the citizen, and your first obligation is to the truth. And I think that media members would probably say, "Oh yeah, we agree with that." But what we've seen in the pandemic is that the loyalty has completely shifted to federal agencies. Your loyalty is to the federal agency and what it says, and it's no longer about answering people's questions. I think media members are forgetting that part of being loyal to the citizen is being tuned into what their primary questions are and getting answers to those questions. But that's not happening. Questions are being ignored and shunned.
So Ivory, before we get into the three-letter alphabet soup corporations and agencies, I'd love to hear from you. What is your definition of fake news, and what are some experiences that you've had where you've seen something that was undeniably false, perhaps being put out?
Well, my experience with being threatened to be fired for actually reporting what that doctor, just actually letting his soundbite out, letting him say in his own words what he did.
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. We have used it. I mean, we know that it's a drug that has been politicized up to the wazoo. We've used it. We use it with good success.
That just really alerted me to this issue of what I call deceptive news, because the company wasn't saying we are lying to the people. They weren't lying, they weren't making up a lie, but they were suppressing the truth. They were just saying there's just swaths of information that we just don't want people to know. And so I think the biggest problem right now is suppressed information. There's giant swaths of information that people are just not supposed to know about. So, and then there was a lot of pressure to follow the national narrative. So if, this narrative came up in the summer of 2020 that so many people were dying of COVID, that there were refrigerator trucks outside of hospitals to collect the bodies. And I was assigned to that story. Just basically there was all this pressure to make it happen, make this story happen on refrigerator trucks. Find those refrigerator trucks, Ivory. We know they're out there. And so one refrigerator truck was found in northwest Houston. It was empty. It was unused the entire pandemic. And so here, there's peer pressure is such a thing in the media. Reporters feel so much pressure to make their bosses happy and make the assignment happen, regardless of whether the assignment is the truth. And so talking to this hospital, it was very clear, okay, this was in case it got bad enough, but it's not being used. This refrigerator truck is empty. And then I talked to the medical examiner's office, and they weren't dealing with refrigerator trucks. They said murders are way up. There's some we're still investigating this huge number of deaths. We're not sure if they're suicides, but if they are suicides, then suicides are skyrocketing. And sure, there's a few COVID deaths too. COVID deaths are contributing. So I reported what I uncovered. And, the first thing was that murders are way up. So yeah, there's one refrigerator truck, but what I found in my coverage is that the pandemic has led to an extreme number of murders. And so I think people need to go back to collecting the facts on the ground. Again, I think there's too much pressure to, try to... people don't realize how easy it is to manipulate a story. I could have led with that refrigerator truck. I could have said that refrigerator trucks are indeed being brought into Houston because of the escalating number of COVID cases. I could have excluded that truck was empty. Mm-hmm. And I could have talked to one of the many officials who would have gladly said how many COVID cases there were. But, I kept it real. And so I think we're seeing a lot of media members not keep it real and do that sort of manipulation, the careful crafting to make one truck look like something that it's not. So I think that's the majority of what we are seeing.